Wisconsin Eye's 2014 election coverage is brought to you by the Wisconsin Hospital Association. For over 90 years, a valued voice for Wisconsin hospitals, supporting high-quality, high-value care in communities like yours.
Wisconsin Eye is in Eau Claire on the campus of Chippewa Valley Tech College. We are interviewing State Representative Warren Petryk of Oliva. He's a Republican seeking re-election in Assembly District 93. Warren, welcome back to Wisconsin Eye.
It's great to be here, Steve. Thanks for the opportunity.
Wisconsin Eye appreciates the support of the Wisconsin Hospital Association, which represents more than 139 hospitals and health systems, for making these candidate interviews possible. Warren, I want to start on your campaign website. You say today Wisconsin's house is in order, but you're well aware of the Fiscal Bureau report, which says that you could face, if reelected, a potential deficit exceeding $1 billion in the next two-year budget cycle. So is the fiscal house in order, sir?
I believe it is, and truly what the Fiscal Bureau has come out with, and I respect Bob Lang so much, and he informs us constantly of the one sentence which wasn't reported very much, and that was, this is an estimate, and it is a scenario that could happen given that there's no economic growth or revenue increases that are included into that report. So it really is a wake-up call for us to be very, very careful, as we were in the previous session and the previous budget before that. So the last two budgets, I believe we've been very fiscally responsible, and I'm just excited. I've never been this excited about the future of Wisconsin, ever. And not because I'm serving, it's just that I'm very pleased with the direction we're headed, and that's toward more and more fiscal responsibility and spending our dollars wisely.
You've heard the criticism from Democrats, starting with Mary Burke, the Democratic candidate for governor, that this potential deficit is a reason why Republicans like you shouldn't have voted for 3 tax cuts in the last 18-20 months. Your response, sir?
My response would be that as I talk to people in my district and I ask them if they'd like to keep more of their own money in their own pocket, they say overwhelmingly, 90% say yes, that they would. And I say, if we have a surplus, let's give it back to those that can stimulate the economy better than anyone else, and that's the average taxpayer. That I hear more and more when I talk to businesses, when I talk to business owners, when I talk to individuals. They say, please reduce our tax burden. That's our number one impediment to growing businesses and jobs. And my number one goal will not change ever since I ran the first time. That's job creation. How do we do that? We encourage investment in our state. And that's by reducing the tax burden, number one, and carefully regulating. I think regulation should be protection, but it should be not stifle innovation and investment. Those are the two keys to coming out of this recession, and I think we've turned that corner.
If you're reelected, one of the biggest budget decisions will be aid to public schools in the next budget. What will be your priorities as future school aid is debated?
I'm so excited about this. I did get to serve, and I'm very humbled to have been named to the Speaker's Task Force on Rural Schools. And of course, all my schools are rural. They basically have the challenges that are faced up in northeastern Wisconsin, that are faced in northwestern Wisconsin, but here in west central Wisconsin, as I speak to my superintendents, my teachers, those that are in charge of our children, we see a number of common themes that we must address in the future. And I think the future is now. As soon as we come back in January, I know that myself, the chair of the committee, Representative Swearingen, and the others that were on that committee will go after the 12 recommendations that we made to improve our rural schools. I mean, future of this state, of course, is in our public schools, in our private schools, and we want them to flourish. So any tools that we can give them as a legislature is going to be a win-win-win for our future job force, for our children, of course, because that's our number one priority. Education is so important. So that said, we came up with 12 major recommendations. I could list them. I don't know if we want to go in that kind of detail.
Well, but my question is, with a potential deficit, would you be able to fund some of those recommendations of the task force?
I really believe we can. What is often forgotten in the conversation is that 40% of our budget will most likely end up going to K-12. And that's the way it should be. Historically, that's the way it's been. And I truly believe that the deficit is overblown to the extent that the key statistic for me is that at just 3.4% growth, which is the average since 2004 has been about 3.4% growth in revenues, will actually eliminate all of that structural deficit. Okay. So as we go forward, the challenge will be how to use those dollars really wisely so that we can provide better broadband for rural schools, so that we can maybe provide teacher incentives to move to the rural areas. All of these things that we heard over and over. These are things that we can work on and that we will work on. And I really believe that I can have the support of the Speaker, the support of the Senate, and the support of the Governor on that particular topic.
A part of this debate in the next session will be over voucher and choice schools. Do you support those?
Actually, I want every child to have the option to get the best education they possibly can. If it's a failing school area, and we do know that they exist in the state, mostly in the urban areas, that program has been a success. The future of it, I'm not too concerned about growing it because it's right now 0.001% of all the school children are involved in the voucher program. So if there's one that would do better and maybe reaches full potential, his or her full potential by using a voucher, more power to them. It's actually half the cost that we see in public schools, but they don't have taxing power. So those dollars, when used wisely and accountably, and we have to make sure that we have accountability in place for every school that receives any kind of public dollars, and we will do that. That's almost assuredly going to happen.
Do you support Governor Walker's call for Wisconsin to withdraw from the Common Core standards?
It's an interesting statement, and it was one sentence. I'd like to see how that's fleshed out, and certainly I'll be paying close attention to what that might look like. I listened to a lot of the conversation around it, and the reason that I had less heartburn than some of my colleagues was we still can set the curriculum at a local level. To me, it's all about local control. So if a school is able to say, yes, this is appropriate for our children in Plum City, our children in Durand, our children in Prescott, then I don't really have a problem with it. But we must set our standards high. If the national Common Core standards are substandard and don't put enough emphasis on STEM emphasis, then I think that those locals should be able to go above and beyond. Should we set a Wisconsin standard that's even better? I'll look at it carefully. I'm not a curriculum writer, so I'll listen to the experts. I'll talk to Tony Evers. I'll make sure that we do the best job we can for those children.
Separate from the potential general fund deficit, it's been estimated that we might have a transportation fund deficit in the next biennium of $600 million, $700 million. How do you think that should be filled?
This will be one of the major challenges going forward. In Wisconsin, we love our good roads. There's no doubt about it. We have very few gravel roads. Many of them are in my western Wisconsin district, and they're fine. However, whenever we're dealing with blacktop or concrete roads, we're dealing with a very expensive to maintain and a very expensive to build sort of entity. But those that do it very, very well, but we have to responsibly budget for that. So we did bond on several major transportation issues in the last budget, but those are legacy projects, and you have to understand that your children and their children will be paying for those over a long time, and right now is a good time to borrow. But is that a good business plan going forward? I tend to think not. I think we need to come up with some other alternatives for funding transportation, and it will be very tricky. We will look at all of the options that were brought forth by the study committee 2 years ago. Many good ideas in there, but they all cost money, and they all involved tax or fee raises. But those will all be on the table. Everything will be considered as we go forward. We must get underneath that love for good highways that we have, and it's an economic boon to our state. Everything has to come through that trunk, and in order for goods to be delivered, in order for businesses to thrive, and that is my number one priority. And we must keep our economics strong. We must keep the job creators happy and able to deliver their goods.
So you would consider the recommendations of the task force that suggested raising the gas tax and the $75 annual license plate fee?
I said everything is on the table.
Everything's on the table.
We need to look at all those options very carefully and see which ones are most palatable to the citizens. Most people I talk to realize that if we're going to continue to maintain and build, we're going to have to pay in some way. Which of those are best, I'm not sure, but we will look at all of the different options, and if tolling becomes a reality, that may, if the federal government allows us to do that, perhaps we can have a whole new source of revenue. But we do need to find new revenue streams, not only for transportation, Steve, but also for education and for the universities. And I know that collaboration is going to be the future. And our universities have a new leader. I really feel that it's going to be very, very strong as far as creating new partnerships and new collaborations. We're doing it right here at UW-Eau Claire. We're doing it in River Falls. We're doing it at Stout. And it's an exciting time to be involved with all of these decisions.
1 in 5 Wisconsin residents get their health care through the Medicaid program.
Yes, sir.
The American Hospital Association rates our reimbursement rates as second lowest. Should they be increased, Warren?
We should look at it very carefully. I hope that we can actually increase those. I think we are near the bottom as far as reimbursement rates. And what happens is that those that are paying, then the cost gets shifted to them. So it's an unfortunate thing that over the years, 1 in 5, as you pointed out, become dependent on the government for their health care. And that is driving up costs. There's no doubt about it. But what Wisconsin did was make sure that everyone below the federal poverty level is covered. They have great health care coverage, and we're the only state in the union that was able to do that. And we took that on our shoulders as a major portion of our budgeting. And we did it in the budget before, and we had about a $1.5 billion price tag to fill. So all of these things were very challenging as we went into 2010. They were still challenging in 2012, and they're going to continue to be challenging as we go into the next biennium.
The explosion of frac sand mining, has that generally worked out, or do you see the need for some type of action by the Senate, the Assembly, in the Capitol?
I hear a lot of conversation around it. I've visited with the folks that live near the mines. I've visited with the owners. I've had literally hundreds of hours spent on this topic. I really feel that the industry has done a great job of going to their neighbors, going to the local boards and working things out. The Zwiefelhofer case up in Chippewa County sort of set the tone of saying, hey, we can regulate and we can do a good job of it if the company will work with us. And what I discovered is they want to be good neighbors. They do want very, very much to be able to say, how can we best be on your side and protect the air and water quality, which they have to do. They're so regulated. They're very, very regulated. DNR and EPA, all of the different regulations that are on them, they must follow to a T. So I really believe that if the state must step in, we have to be very careful to maintain that local integrity so that they can control what is going on in their neighborhood. And so far that's been working out very well. It's a $3.5 billion industry. It's here to stay. It's a wonderful source of income and tax revenue for the state. So we'll just look at it very carefully and listen to our citizens.
The bill to legalize medical marijuana will be reintroduced, and now Colorado and the state of Washington have legalized recreational marijuana. Your position on those issues?
I've listened to some of the conversation, but since I knew it wasn't going to be taken up, I didn't dig into it as I should have at that time. But now, going forward, I will talk to all the medical people, all the law enforcement people, and see what kinds of challenges we'll have if we're going to write a piece of legislation. Around that conversation will be certainly the alleviation of pain. I mean, my goodness, the medical world, that's their calling. And if they have one more tool in their box to be able to say, yes, this would help my patients, and we can control this substance without a major concern about it becoming more available to the public illegally, then perhaps we should look seriously at medical marijuana. Recreational marijuana, I've heard a lot of conversation around it already. There will be more, but I really doubt that we'll be taking that up in the next term. I don't think that it's a good idea from the law enforcement people that I've talked to, from the medical experts that I've talked to. There are many more concerns than there are positives on that side. But certainly medical marijuana is something to be considered.
First offense OWI, should that be a crime, Warren?
Well, we already require that they go to court, and that is huge, and it's a serious crime anytime someone does that. But should a felony follow them? Should they not be able to vote after a first offense? I really doubt that that would be the answer. We have to look at the major question, and that is, how do we prevent folks from getting behind the wheel? I think it has to come down to a lot of personal responsibility on the part of the individual to say, I don't want to hurt anyone. And I think some of the companies that produce the products have done a very good job of educating, and I know we're educating in the schools. Parents need to get very involved with their children and say, make responsible choices so that you don't hurt others. But a felony, perhaps not, but we have tightened those laws. We have required more on the law enforcement end of people, especially multiple offenders, and that's a good thing.
Finally, do you want to highlight any differences between you and your opponent on November 4?
I ran in 2010 basically due to the failure of my opponent to support things that I believed would have moved Wisconsin forward. My decisions have been very positive. This economy now is making a turn, and we've created over 100,000 jobs. Under my opponent, 150,000 jobs left and will never come back. Also, we have about 13,000, I believe, new businesses in Wisconsin now, and about 15,000 left in the previous 4 years. Those are major contrasts. I voted to reduce taxes by $2 billion. He voted to raise taxes by $5 billion. So the contrast couldn't be more stark. And it truly is a question of moving Wisconsin forward with integrity, sustainability, responsibility, or going back to the failed past. That's the way I look at it, and I'm so proud to serve the people of Western Wisconsin. It is truly the honor of my life.
Thank you. State Representative Warren Petryk of Oliva is a Republican seeking re-election in Assembly District 93. Warren, thanks for talking to Wisconsin Eye.
Thank you so much, Stephen. It's always a pleasure to see you.
Thank you.